So this week, kiddies, I've been mostly blind drunk. But in those all too fleeting moments where I briefly regained the power of sight, I've been testing out Samsung's latest crooked pocket-sized wonder phone, the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7. Woof! And on this week's show, I'll be regurgitating thoughts from my first several days of play, followed by the usual sack of viewer comments. Jingle me! Techspert Weekly! Now first up, I really do like Samsung's smart, slick and slender design. It's pleasingly slim when unfolded, nice and compact when all crushed up, zero gap action as you would expect. And I especially like this here sultry blue shadow version. Although naturally the slap you in the chops coral red jobby is a proper standout. And of course, like all flip phones, the Z Flip 7 fits effortlessly into a trouser, along with whatever else you happen to have stashed in there, which in today's case is a miniature bottle of whiskey and another identical miniature bottle of whiskey. And while I've only had it a few days so far, the Galaxy Z Flip 7 does feel reassuringly rugged, from the armour aluminium frame to the solid squeak-free hinge to the Gorilla Glass Victus 2 front and back end as well, both of which are yet to pick up a single solitary nick, scratch or scuff, despite being stuffed into pockets with bottles of booze. That arse end does a respectable job of remaining fairly grease and grime free, although the cover screen and that main front screen both do get pretty mucky. It's especially obvious when using them outdoors, and especially bad if you like to eat fried good stuffs. Apart from that, no real complaints besides the edge-mounted fingerprint sensor, which is exceedingly dinky and generally works alright as long as your hands are completely dry and clean. But as soon as your digits are even slightly moist, it's just like, nope, refuses to recognise you. But thankfully the old face unlock is generally more reliable, even if it occasionally takes a couple of seconds to kick in. Now, I did find myself using the Galaxy Z Flip 7 in tent mode quite a lot while I was working. And just for clarification, that's not the same tent mode that my pants inadvertently activate every time somebody mentions indefatigable pop starlet Shakira. I mean, come on, she's even proper fit in gazelle form. Although, after professing my love for Babs Bunny in the previous episode, I might just edit this bit out before everyone thinks I'm some sort of furry fiddler. Now, tent mode on the Flip works really well, thanks in part to the expanded 4.1-inch cover screen with 120Hz silky smooth refresh, plus Samsung's smart UI design. Your notifications and your media controls are literally a quick flick or a poke away. And of course, all your apps are easy to access now as well, at least once you've actually installed Good Luck and Multi-Star, as usual. And hey, at least Samsung actually tells you about Multi-Star now, even if this option is hidden away inside of the Labs section of the settings. So people actually stand some sort of semblance of a chance of discovering that yes, you can run any app you like on that cover screen without having to resort to watching permanently pickled prongs on YouTube, like my good self. And you'll notice that when you load up an app, a handy wee icon pops up just beneath the camera flash here at the bottom of the cover screen. And that's pretty handy because those camera bumps can sometimes get in the way a bit in full screen mode, so it's quite handy to be able to shift to landscape mode and then tap whatever you need to actually access. You can always go back into full screen mode after. That cover screen is now beautifully bright as well, clear to see outdoors even on a very sunny day, and you've also got full Gemini Live support on it. How slay does my hair look today?
It looks like you've got a bit of a receding hairline there. Is that what you wanted to know?
No, I wanted you to lie and say that I looked really good. One small complaint would be that the screen is rather sensitive, so sometimes you end up flicking right past the widget page that you actually want. If you're in something like Spotify, for instance, sometimes the scrolling can be a wee bit, again, too quick. And basically I've found that the cover screen on the Z Flip 7 is now just as handy as the cover display on the Motorola Razr 60 Ultra, so it certainly gets my spurt of approval. I only usually prise open the Z Flip 7 if I'm trying to, for instance, write a message that's longer than a sentence, which isn't all that common to be fair. Most of my messages are just a few words long, roughly 50% of those obscene. And it's usually just a demand for someone to bring me booze or snacks or to help me because I've fallen and I can't get back up. And to be fair, that extended view means that typing on the Galaxy Z Flip 7's cover screen is actually not ridiculous. but I do also pop the Z Flip 7 open if I want to watch a bit of Netflix or whatever, because while the Super AMOLED front screen is fine for streaming some basic YouTube bollocks, that compact square design ain't exactly ideal for full-length films or anything where you actually want to know what's happening or who's talking, that sort of stuff. The internal 6.9-inch dynamic AMOLED 2X display is crisp and poppy with basically zero crease. You can just about feel a dinky little ridge when you rub your thumb over that middle bit, but honestly Samsung has done an absolute wondrous job here. My only complaint is that you will end up squinting a bit on fiercely bright sunshiny days thanks to that highly reflective cover. So here in Blighty that'll be mildly annoying for about 2.5 days each year. But it's otherwise perfect for enjoying a bit of movie action and also handy for multitasking if you're into a bit of split screen shenanigans. You will notice the occasional wee bit of balkiness when swapping from the cover screen to the internal screen and vice versa, as apps are just like, wait, what the bloody hell just happened there? And also, somewhat annoyingly, the Flip 7 doesn't automatically enter tent mode when you fold it up and pop it down like so. Although to be fair, all it takes is a double tap of the screen and there you go. So yes, it's a silly grumble and a minor ball ache at best, but I'm British so I'm going to whine about it anyway. And the Z Flip 7 boasts a stereo speaker arrangement, at least when the phone is stretched out like so, and it's surprisingly bloody loud for such a dinky wee thing. But the audio is still pretty clear, certainly good enough for a bit of Netflix viewing, even when there's literally drilling going on in the room right next to you. And thankfully the sound isn't muffled if you are watching some YouTube or whatever on that cover panel, even though the speakers are actually facing away from you. Now, the Galaxy Z Flip 7 is the first ever smartphone to use Samsung's fresh new 3nm Exynos 2500 chipset, backed here by 12 gigs of RAM. And the everyday handling is pretty smooth, although you will see the occasional bits of One UI jank, which is pretty standard really. It's the occasional wee judder when skipping through your menus or your desktops or whatever. And sadly, the Galaxy Z Flip 7 hasn't proven quite as strong as the likes of Motorola's Razr 60 Ultra when it comes to gaming. You've got a decent enough gamer mode slapped on here, but even on the highest performance setting, that frame rate regularly struggles whenever you get into a bit of a Barney with the locals. Wuthering Waves is still playable, but it feels rather sluggish, so I would recommend knocking down the visual settings just to keep things moving along a bit more smoothly. And the Z Flip 7 can certainly get quite warm around the edges as well when you're gaming, and also if you're using the camera a reasonable amount. Thankfully it doesn't get troublesomely toasty, nowhere near Nothing Phone 3 levels for instance. And also the Z Flip 7 sports a pretty dinky 4300 mAh capacity battery, which again is smaller than some rivals like that Moto Razr, although unfeasibly it's almost as big as the one that Samsung shoved into the Z Fold 7. And as always, I would say if you live quite an active lifestyle, you're constantly out and about shooting your mug, uploading those pics to the social medias, all that good stuff, you'll probably find you're struggling with the Z Flip 7's battery life by the end of a busy day. Whereas personally I found with around 5 to 6 hours of mixed screen on time, plenty of messaging, web browsing, a bit of camera action as well, the occasional wee video chat, and a fair bit of Spotify streaming in the background as well. I typically ended up in battery saver mode by the end of the day, but I still have usually around 10% battery life remaining. I certainly don't get the same battery fears that I did with previous Samsung Flippy type phones, that's for sure. And if you are gaming non-stop on Wuthering Waves on that big screen on this thing, a full charge will still get you around 3.5 hours of intense action with the visuals set to the maximum levels, which actually ain't bad again at all. Unfortunately, I do have to slip back into my moany British Y-fronts when it comes to the charging tech, because it's 25 watt wired charging here, which is about as speedy as a legless pensioner wearing a concrete hat. You do have wireless charging as well, but it's 15 watts, which is even slower, so just make sure if you're running low on juice, you want to plug it in before you go out for the evening, and make sure you shove a cable in it a good hour or two before you bugger off out. And last up, the cameras, which unfortunately I haven't had a massively great chance to test out this week, as I haven't really ventured much further than the local odd bins. But to be fair, it's a pretty simple setup here on the Galaxy Z Flip 7. You've got yourself a 50 megapixel primary shooter plus a basic 12 megapixel ultra wide angle snapper, and that's it. And if that's giving you any deja vu, that's probably because it's the exact same camera hardware that was stuffed inside of the Galaxy Z Flip 6. 0 upgrades for this generation, which is a bit of a shame, although at least the Z Flip 6 was alright for your everyday photo and video shenanigans. And this setup is nice and easy to use, whether you're shooting your lovely family or begrudgingly taking a selfie because that's part of your so-called job, and then despairing over how your face is getting so wrinkly it's starting to resemble an elephant's happy sack. Just tap the screen or flash your palm and the Z Flip 7 will capture your saggy chops for a good bit of instant depression. As always, you can quickly flick between the portrait mode, the regular photo mode and the video mode like so. You can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second footage with HDR mode switched on, as long as you're shooting in this stretched aspect ratio. This is absolutely fine for all your vlogging needs. As I say, you can record it in landscape or portrait. The audio pickup's absolutely fine. Stabilization is excellent, even at that 4K Ultra HD resolution level. And the Z Flip 7 also features an auto zoom mode as well, which can apparently help to keep you center of the frame, although to be honest this often just ends up zooming out quite a lot, even when you're stood quite a distance away from the camera. As you can see, we're now entering ultra wide mode, even though I've actually stepped back from the Z Flip 7. I was kind of hoping it would zoom more into my face, and then when I get closer it kind of zooms in again. And this doesn't seem to be an option when you're capturing video either, it's only active for those photos. And last up, you've got yourself a 10 megapixel selfie shooter inside that internal display as well, which is pretty good. If you want to just prop up the phone and use it for a bit of, I was going to say Skype, and Skype hasn't been a thing for at least a couple of months now, a bit of video chat or whatever. And anyway, that's what this permanently pissed old Get reckons after spending a good few days getting to know Samsung's Galaxy Z Flip 7. But what do you reckon? Is this the ultimate dinky flipper or just yet another flexible f***wit? Let us know down in the comments below. And I've spent so long banging on about this wee bugger that now I've got absolutely so little time for an Uncle Spurt's Wee One or any of those lovely little filler segments that I usually stuff in the middle of the show. So hey, let's hop and skip and flop onto some lovely and some not so lovely and some downright devastating viewer comments. Viewer comments.
That's all you have to do!
Alright, let's start this week with LMNOP, who says Mr. Beast looks like he's been going to the same sweetie shop as Elon. Yeah, it does seem to be that having shag loads of money just either turns you into a psychopath or a complete dick splat, or in Elon's case, both. The only real exception I can think of off the top of my head is Bill Gates, of course. Literally cannot think of anyone else who's mega rich and also not a maniac. Tron the Don says, you didn't have to violate us like that, Unk. The timestamp 6 minutes 8 seconds. What did I do this time? Ugh. Here we go, 6 minutes 8 seconds.
Looking at the time. And you've also got very basic notification support with a level of vibration that your mum would certainly approve of.
The good old predictable your mum joke. I take it this was your first foray into Techspert Weekly then. Next up, Fastest Milkman says, is that a Duke ball on the shelf, Mr. Spurt? I assume you're referring to the old cricket ball here. Is Duke like the make of it, or a certain type of cricket ball? I got no idea. It says Readers on it, if that helps. You know, it's really weird. I only got this cricket ball recently, but I can't remember how or why or where. I really must stop huffing glue. All I can say is that the last time I played cricket, I was young and sprightly and had a fully functioning liver, and I believe John Major was still in power. The golden era of British politics. I'll tell you, if you think that Keir Starmer is an absolute sex pot, he had absolutely nout on Johnny Boy. Jed Bullet says, Dubai, some more melting Uncle Spurt vids, scuttling from aircon to aircon while drinking booze. Yeah, somehow managed to survive the 40-degree plus heat in the UAE for the second time this frickin' year. Absolutely down on my knees praying that the next launch I have to attend abroad is going to be in Iceland or something like that, because I don't think my fragile northern flesh can withstand a third outing. Also on that subject, Void says, did you try Dubai chocolate? I don't get the influencer hype. Yeah, unsurprisingly, like most things in this world that influencers absolutely lose their shit over, Dubai chocolate is just a sack of overpriced wank juice. I did, out of curiosity, pay about £7 for a bar of the stuff because I'm an absolute f***ing idiot, and guess what? Not as good as a Twix. Although to be fair, these days even a Twix probably costs the best part of a £5. On the subject of delicious snackage, Bonus Baby says, what exactly are pork scratchings? Only the finest delicacy ever conceived by man, my good friend. And basically what you do is you skin a pig and then you boil the absolute buggery out of that skin until it's nice and soggy, and then you scrape off all the excess fat and you chop it into lots of wee bits, and then you hoy all those sloppy skin chunks into an oven and cook the shit out of them until they're hard enough to splinter your teeth. And there you have it, that's a pork scratching, and you know, fair play when I describe them. It doesn't make them sound the most appetizing thing in the world, but believe me, they are the best thing you can put inside yourself that isn't alcohol. Of course, the previous episode was on the subject of the Vivo X200 Fan Edition, which I am still in the process of reviewing, Scout's Honour. Big Smoke says, finally a worthy successor to my aging Samsung Galaxy S10e. That is a bit of an old one. The only blower in recent memory worthy of that title. M. Caesar says, I hope there will be a true mini phone like a 5.5 to 5.8 incher with a 4500 to 5000 mAh capacity battery and a small bezel. That would be awesome. That indeed would be awesome. That would be more than awesome. That would be full on trousers round the ankles, bust out the baby oil time. A few comments like this one from Igor Crypto, who says, I don't accept the statement that a 6.3 inch smartphone is small. Again, it's all about the context. The context is vital here. 6.3 inches in 2025 is pretty small. If you took the Vivo X200 Fan Edition and hopped into a DeLorean and off back to the 2010s, then yeah, it wouldn't be quite so small. And believe me, there are a few things I would rather do than hop into a DeLorean and off back in time, especially at least to the 2010s when phones were not only smaller but also they were just batshit mental in general. I'd absolutely adore it if there were tons of smartphones this sort of size, but it's 2025 folks, it ain't gonna happen. Regaming says, yay, new extra dense battery tech. What a great opportunity to use that extra space for a headphone jack. That would be lovely. Motomat says, Jesus, nobody tells Samsung about that kind of super dense battery tech. There'll be planes exploding and nads being fried all over the place. And Dave Potter says, epic. I love that it's compact, but it doesn't sacrifice the battery. And also, get a real job, you bald legend. I did the whole real job thing once, but my managers didn't approve of the whole day drinking concept, so it didn't really work out. And Mr. Watermelon says, this or the iPhone 16e. I mean, seriously, replace this in that sentence with pretty much anything ever, and this will win 9 times out of 10. Bubonic plague or the iPhone 16e. Oh yeah, inject me full of that good stuff, please do. A kick in the cock or the iPhone 16e. Well, hang on, just let me drop my trousers while you take a run up. Anyway, as I say, full review, still working on that, but of course lots of bendy blowers and stuff to piddle about with this week, so it's kind of been kicked back a wee bit, but it will happen. I swear, it'll happen. Soaked in Bleach says 10,000 mAh is the perfect battery size for a phone. I can't wait to have YouTube on for 12 hours and still be over 50%. I would say that I hope that's 12 straight hours of Uncle Spurt action, but most people can't even tolerate me for 12 minutes. Case in point, there's probably only about half a dozen people still actually watching at this point. You are one of the chosen few. IGI makes a good point. He says, bro, what's actually happened in 2025? Why have all the mid-range and flagship phones released so far this year been so disappointing? That's been pretty slim pickings this year. I mean, off the top of my head, Nothing Phone 3A and 3A Pro and the CMF Phone 2 Pro were pretty good, especially if you just want to spend, £200-300 quid. Quite enjoyed some of the Vivo phones, etc., but it says a lot really that one of the best foldable phones of the year, the Oppo Find N5, you can't even bloody get anywhere near this country. And what is still my favourite flagship of the year was released all the way back in bloody January. It's not exactly been a cracker, has it? And Stuart Bradley says, Jet Set Willy and Manic Miner are still 2 of my favourite all-time games. Absolute, yeah, 100% accurate there. Although I've got to say, Manic Miner, I'm still yet to actually finish it without cheating in some way by using save states or whatever. You can take your Dark Souls and shove it right up your arse, frankly. Back then, that was when games were proper games. Etienne Sharp says, Jet Set Willy is what your mum calls me, due to speed of conclusion, sadly. And also, where are you getting Tennant Super for $1.33 a can? I'll need a precise location, please. I believe it was just from good old Tesco's in one of their many, oh my god, isn't life horrendous, let's just all get blackout drunk type deals. And Boyaka says, oh Mr. Spurt, how did you get so wrinkly and British? Well, the British part I couldn't really do much about. The wrinkly bit, that's just down to a combination of the passage of time and ritually abusing my body with all kinds of horrendous deep fried stuffs, not inconsiderable amount of booze and far too much internet grot. But anyway, that's enough of the let's make Uncle Spurt feel really bloody great about himself as usual segment. A massive thanks to everyone who commented in the previous episode. Please do smash your comments down below and we'll get through as many of those as possible next week. And speaking of next week, what the f is next week? Well, butter my arse and call me a crumpet, because I don't believe there's any actual tech launches going on at all next week. Either that or I just forgot to put them into the bloody calendar. And to be honest, that's probably just as well, because I've got multiple bendy Samsung phones to get through. I've got the Vivo X200 FE, of course, to finally review. And of course, join me as ever, same time again next week for another lovely dose of TechSpurt Weekly. I'll actually try to not get all horny over cartoon animals. And thanks for making it to the bitter end of this bollocks. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell if you haven't done already for some ridiculous reason. And have yourselves an absolutely ruddy wonderful weekend. Cheers everybody, love you!